Welcome to Game Changers Silicon Valley, a show about today's emerging innovations that may be the game changers of tomorrow. My name is Jim Connor. I will be your host tonight. This segment of tonight's show will address the issue of accurately measuring student progress and using periodic data analysis to evaluate the quality of a curriculum. My guest is John Danner, a well-known educator, operator of charter schools, and now starting a new company focused on assessing the effectiveness of curriculum content and teaching methods. John, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me,
Known
Jim.
you for a few years. Tell us about Zeal.
Yeah, the idea behind Zeal really is that a teacher should have all the data that they need about their students so that when they're trying to figure out what they're going to do the next week, or the next few weeks, they're doing that knowing what every student in their class knows on the skills that they're about to teach. So if you were getting ready to teach two-digit addition and you saw that 3/4 of the kids in your class already knew two-digit addition, you might take that other quarter and teach them in a small group while the first 3/4 starts to move on to the next thing, maybe multiplication. So trying to really give teachers the same data that school systems have had for a long time so that they can make better decisions.
Wow. I'm going to sound a little naive, but I thought teachers had access to the school data all along, and I guess they really don't.
Yeah, the hard thing for teachers is that if you give them data that's not almost daily, there's not much you can do with it. If you get assessment data every 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 3 times a year, which is what's normal in schools, that's nice possibly as a way for the school to keep track of what's going on. But for a teacher, you really need information about, did the thing that I taught today cause students to learn it or not? If not, maybe I need to go back and teach it a different way. If so, great, I can move on. But if you don't find out for 6 or 8 weeks, then it's like a report card. You're getting a report card, which is not very useful for what you need to do in the classroom.
I see. So you're doing a much more current. Is it daily or?
Yeah, most teachers are using Zeal 2 or 3 times a week. So they'll basically augment what teachers call exit tickets. So exit tickets are typically quizzes that teachers give after they teach something to see if the students understood it. The advantage with Zeal is we created 10,000 test items that are all Common Core aligned so that the end of year assessments, either Smarter, Balanced, or PARC, are aligned with the questions that we made. So you can add some Zeal questions and then find out, well, did my kids understand what I taught? And if they understood that, will they do well on the standards-based tests at the end of the year? So there are no surprises later on.
Because I know a little bit of your history, you've undertaken assessments within this new Common Core curriculum, and that's been quite a challenge, I imagine. I don't know of many people or companies that have done that. How did you get that started? How did you undertake that effort?
One of the things about Zeal that's interesting is that we built this test bank because we wanted to use it in order to help personalize instruction for students. And so we've built both a test bank ourselves of our own questions, and then we've had 80,000 questions that teachers have generated that are part of the system. When we asked the first few hundred teachers that were using Zeal, well, what are you doing with Zeal? We thought they'd say, oh, well, we're personalizing instruction so kids can get exactly what they need. But in fact, teachers said, we're using the data from Zeal to figure out what we should do in the classroom. And so we realized getting deeper and deeper on understanding the Common Core and building class questions that really aligned with Common Core and end of year tests was really what teachers needed now. And I think it's driven by just kind of that fear that you have as a teacher when the standards change. Well, is the way I'm teaching now aligned with what that is? And so that's why we change the standards so seldom, but when we do, it's a pretty traumatic event.
How is that adoption rate going? Are you getting enough feedback, or do you need to wait till the end of the year and see?
One of the nice things about the Common Core is that I think once a lot of the controversy is done, there are actually some really good things, especially we do K-8, kindergarten through 8th grade, and there are a lot of really good basic ideas, especially within higher order thinking in K-8 that I think are going to improve teaching. It's just going to be a little challenging for the first few years. So having a system that helps you as a teacher kind of understand what your students know, that lets you dig in and figure out what is the Common Core trying to get at that by looking at questions and understanding that, I hope is going to help kind of ease the transition.
Mm-hmm. some may not know this, you're a founder of Rocketship
Yep.
Charter School.
Yep.
Very successful, one of probably
Thank
the
you.
most successful schools
you.
in the country for that matter. And I'm sure you've brought that experience forward, but I thought I'd take a minute and let you tell the audience here about Rocketship. What was the charter school experience like for you?
Yeah. Well, we created Rocketship based on an experience I had in my own classroom. So I taught for 3 years, and I taught 2nd grade and 5th grade. And I had a strange experience in that, when you're a new teacher and you go in those first few weeks and you try to figure out how your class is doing, what I found I was teaching in a low-income school with primarily English language learners, is that I had students just all over the map. There were students that were actually on grade level, but there were just as many that were above grade level and just as many below grade level. And I went to the other teachers and said, so what should I do? I mean, it doesn't really make sense to just teach here if I have students here and here. And they used, an education term, well, you need to differentiate. And I kind of asked, well, what's that mean? And what it really meant was you got to do your best to kind of reach those kids that are up here and down here in small groups and other things. And I observed that for a while and just realized that what really mattered was trying to get at what each child needed to learn and individualize that instruction. So the idea behind Rocketship was to individualize instruction so that at least for kind of the hard skills in math and reading and writing, students would get what was developmentally appropriate for them. Not necessarily if they were a 2nd grader, but still learning how to count. For at least a couple hours a day, they were going to work on learning how to count, even if the rest of their class was doing something else, because that was important. And so that was very successful academically. The charter school world, of course, is much more complicated than just academics.
Yeah.
And I'd say, speaking just from my experience at Rocketship, I wish that the system did not really pit charter schools against school districts like it did. And I think it does that because there were political decisions made that the schools, charter schools and districts wouldn't be kind of just side by side. They'd be kind of together and forced together. And I think that just causes all kinds of friction that we probably need to move beyond.
Let me go back to one question. When you were able to give a student personalized teaching, if you will,
Yeah.
how did you staff that class in the charter school?
Yeah, so we basically kind of divided the school day into kind of this 2-hour section which was completely individualized. It was in a large lab setting. We had paraprofessionals working in the lab. Students were on computers, and there were tutors that were working with students at different times to work on the skills they needed. And that was really pretty separated from kind of classroom instruction. And we did that really, this was 8-9 years ago now when we started Rocketship. We did that because we were worried about how this more technology-driven part of Rocketship would interact with the classroom. And we knew we just wanted to create great kind of project-based classrooms. And we didn't want all of the technology going on here to intrude on that. So that's kind of how we built it originally. I see more and more schools starting to integrate these two sides more deeply, which I think is really the right answer, because when teachers are actually in charge of what's happening both on the individualized side as well as kind of the project-based side, then they can make better decisions.
I see. There is a lot of, again, controversy all through this about the whole teacher evaluation process, too. How did you evaluate teachers? It's a pretty big challenge, I think.
I think it is a big challenge. And I think actually school systems probably spend more time than they need to on evaluation of teachers. I think that the thing that's really actually very important is giving the teachers enough data and tools to make good decisions themselves, and then just setting the bar where you want to. But I'm a big believer that a lot of the teachers that I saw that had harder times, I think that if they had been experiencing kind of a daily feedback loop of data, how did I teach, how did that go, did the kids learn it? I think a lot of what teachers have to learn the hard way through these evaluative systems can be learned much more easily just by getting constant feedback.
Yeah. I visited your school some years ago. I saw a situation where there was a senior coaching teacher in the back of the room.
Yep.
The teacher who was in front of the room had a wireless earpiece and was receiving feedback real time of what he or she was doing right or could improve on, oh, you
Yep.
missed that. Not a negative, but just a constructive, well, let's go back to that subject. You didn't quite get enough of that. What a remarkable experience and imprinted experience that must have been.
Yeah, doing good kind of professional development in schools, I think people vastly underestimate how difficult it is because teachers get used to teaching a certain way, so it's a behavior, it's a habit. And if you just kind of write a note and say, well, why don't you try this? It's a habit, so you don't want to change any more than you want to change your diet or your exercise or anything like that. And so we just found over time that we really had to literally kind of have our coaches get in the head of teachers and say, just try this right now. Because if you try this right now and it works, teachers are very smart. They're like, well, that really worked. The kids were more focused. I'm going to do that again. And when they do it again, it starts to make sense. But just kind of a written note or the normal way people do it doesn't really work.
Now you build a lot of trust in your school to be able to do that. That is another issue. The administration doesn't always have that relationship. It was built on solid professionals in your team, I assume. Did you have any situations where you actually couldn't get teachers to teach at the level where you felt it was important?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, one of the things about charter schools is that, first of all, every teacher who came to teach at Rocketship kind of knew our system, knew the way we were and the culture. And if you didn't want that culture, you just didn't come to Rocketship. So that was nice. And the second thing was, Rocketship would let teachers go. I have to say that I think Rocketship did quite a good job of helping teachers build up. There's this perception, oh, well, if there are no protections for teachers, of course, people will just fire them willy-nilly. But the investment you make in bringing a teacher on board and training them and trying to, really help them be a great teacher is significant. And so it would be crazy to just say, oh, well, you didn't make the cut, sorry, you're gone. I think Rocketship did a really good job of kind of investing in the teachers and trying to give them a good shot. And frankly, some of the people that I saw do the best in the long term were not the best at the beginning, because teaching is one of those things where it may take you a while to kind of find your voice and get your feet on the ground, but once you do, you may become spectacular. So it takes time.
Yeah. We're here in Silicon Valley. It's a wonderful place to live, and there's tremendous innovation, but I think that some of the, you take companies like Facebook, they go, if you haven't failed at anything, that's not a good idea, because it means you're not taking any chances. We do not have that in the school system. And I think what you're suggesting, what I'm at least hearing, is that it's a good idea to introduce some risk-taking and try this, try that.
Yeah, I think it's very hard in some of these areas like education and healthcare, because the culture has been built up around, let whatever you do, don't take a risk, because these are children or these are sick people. And the reality is that if our education system was 80 or 90% of what it should be, you shouldn't take any risks. You should just incrementally kind of get from 90 to 100%. But, in many, many inner city situations, you're not anywhere near that. You're at maybe 25 or 30% of where you need to be. And so you pretty much have to try some new stuff, some very different stuff. And that probably means you're going to try 5 new things. You're going to fail at 4, but maybe the 5th you get it right. Or maybe 10 you fail and you get 1 right. So that's just a cultural thing where school systems kind of have to get used to the idea that failure is not the worst thing.
What's coming down the pike here for Zeal next year or so?
Yeah, for Zeal, it's really about just trying to get over this first year Common Core hump, right? So this is the first year really that most states are giving end of year assessments that are Common Core based. And we work with teachers all day long that are trying to figure out how to deal with that. And I think so this year for us, and probably for all the teachers we work with, it's just, can we make sure that teachers are getting the best data, the best tools to do that? And hopefully we do a good enough job at that next year when everybody is kind of in their second year of Common Core, they'll start to use our tools to do even better. But this year is kind of the get ready for that first test.
What's the best way for a teacher to contact you, or a parent for that matter, if they want to?
www.zeal.com is the website, and john@zeal.com is my email.
I want to very much thank you for coming in. It's been delightful to have you here. I've enjoyed the conversation and learned more about what's going on in education and the Common Core.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
Okay. This is Jim Connor. I'd like to thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Game Changers Silicon Valley. Thank you for your time, and good night now.